I think to answer the question of what a life coach is, it's probably best to define what a life coach isn't. And by way of doing that, you get a pretty good sense of what a life coach can maybe offer you. A life coach is not a doctor. A life coach is not a psychiatrist. A life coach is not a psychologist. And a life coach is not an accredited counselor. Those are all important distinctions. And each one of those roles, each demarcation, speaks to a specific type of education, certification, or skills. None of them are required to be a life coach. Life coaching has a scope of practice. It's very easy to fall into a trap of operating outside of that scope of practice. All professions have this risk. A psychiatrist can overstep their boundaries just as surely as a life coach can. So this isn't me picking on life coaches. But when they step out of that scope of practice, you get what's known as mission creep. And mission creep is fairly easy to define. We have a mission, but what we do to execute that mission to get the desired outcome, if we creep outside of our operating parameters, that's mission creep. We don't want that. Recognizing all of that, what you're left with is a unique position that a life coach can fulfill for a person. It's something that a psychiatrist, a psychologist, a therapist, a doctor, it's something that friends and family might not be able to fulfill for that person. It's an important role, and the distinctions that we make regarding all of these different roles helps a client determine if any one of those people is right for them. It's especially true if a person requires a degree of accountability that isn't present in some of those roles. That's where I think life coaching, that's the strength of it. I also think that's why it was such a natural segue from personal training and coaching to life coaching. I find that personal training and coaching in general requires a type of skill and negotiation ability to get people to be accountable to a program or even an outcome if they have a specific goal in mind. Life coaching is no different. Most of the people who come to me are looking to achieve a specific outcome in their life. And those outcomes, they vary wildly. The tools of accountability very often don't vary wildly. And I'm going to explain two concepts to you that I use on a regular basis when I am trying to help a client achieve a desired outcome. And for the most part, I am not going to be able to take them to their outcome. Most of what a life coach does, at least in my opinion, a good life coach, what a good life coach does is a type of interviewing. In psychology, there's a type of interviewing that's called motivational interviewing. And you can look that up if you're interested in it, because I'm not going to define it here. What I prefer to rely on is something called accountability interviewing. You can't look that one up because for the most part, I think I made it up. I'm sure I'm not the only person who has ever strung those two words together. I don't know that I've ever found a medicalized or specific definition to accountability interviewing. But I do know that it works. The purpose of accountability interviewing isn't to make the client accountable to me. It's to introduce fidelity into their life to their specific life outcomes. And I try to achieve that through two specific lenses, two filters, if you will. The first one is root cause analysis, and the second one is relational. Now, root cause analysis is exactly what it sounds like. You're trying to determine why something is happening. So you just keep asking a series of questions about the situation until you get to what you can define as the root cause. Basically what it means is you keep asking questions until there are no more questions to ask. It's a brilliant form of analysis. And when I say analysis, I don't mean like psychotherapy analysis. What I mean is just problem-solving analysis. If you have a problem, you essentially keep asking questions until you get to the root of that problem, and that is your launch-off point for any type of problem-solving initiatives, templates, or any type of formulation that you're trying to make as far as correcting your behavior is concerned. Root cause analysis is an extremely powerful tool. It's the kind of lever that if you can learn to pull it, you can, for the most part, solve any problem that you're confronted with. The limits aren't on root cause analysis. The limits are on your expertise or skill set or your imagination to take what you learn from a root cause analysis and apply a solution from it. The next concept that you need to understand is relational. And relational basically is like my shorthand for relationships. But I'm not talking about the relationship that you and I might have with one another. What I'm actually talking about is the problem that you're experiencing. What is your relationship with it? A good example of this one is dealing with clients who are struggling with eating habits, nutritional practices. If you don't dive into why they have the specific relationship they have with food, you are never going to get a suitable solution for managing that issue. It's a little different than root cause in the sense that root cause identifies sort of a gap or a deficit. But when you're dealing with relational issues, relationships, what you're trying to find is why a person feels the way they feel about a certain thing. If you can't unpack that, you're going to have a lot of trouble getting the person to move forward into a positive lifestyle choice. Now, these are two broad concepts that I'm trying to explain, but root cause analysis and relational analysis are what I would consider to be the two most powerful levers that I can pull when I'm trying to help somebody achieve a desired outcome. And I might be repeating myself a little bit, but I cannot express how important both of these concepts are. When it comes to facilitating positive outcomes for a person, those become the two platforms that we rely on together to make positive changes moving forward. They also act as sort of a back catcher or an emergency chute. Anytime you feel like you're regressing or getting stuck, all you need to do is go back to the root cause analysis or your relationship with whatever issue is taking place. I'm telling you how I conduct life coaching, and I'm pretty sure if you got 10 life coaches in a room and asked them how to do life coaching, you would get 11 or more different answers. What it comes down to is best practices. And for me, these are two elements of the best practices I rely on to make sure that clients achieve what they're trying to achieve. There are a lot of concepts that go into successful life coaching, and it's not unlike embarking on a personal fitness journey. You have to put the time in. Life coaching is very similar, and this isn't just a money grab to make sure that people sign up for multiple sessions. If you get it in one session, that's outstanding. My job as a life coach is exactly the same as my job as a personal trainer. My goal is to become unemployed as quickly as possible, but I can't rush your process. Your process is your process specifically, and it takes as long as it takes. I want you to succeed without me more than with me. I don't think it's healthy to have a lifelong life coach. I don't think it's healthy to have a lifelong personal trainer. I do think that you can cultivate relationships with a life coach or a personal trainer and orbit one another for the rest of your life. There's nothing wrong with that. I do think that you can enlist their services multiple times over the course of your life. That is absolutely something that I agree with. But I don't think that having a life coach on retainer like a lawyer makes a lot of sense. I think that people should engage or enlist a life coach to deal with a specific problem. And it should be one problem at a time, get through that, achieve a desired outcome, and then move on. I think that if you wanted to use multiple life coaches at different times in your life, there's probably nothing wrong with that either. You wouldn't go to 2 personal trainers for the most part and get similar style training. I don't think that you necessarily should go to 2 life coaches at the same time either. But I do think that a life coach and a therapist of some type, whether a psychiatrist or a psychologist, is a great combination. I do think that the life coach and the therapist need to be on the same page, and in a perfect world, they would communicate with one another to ensure that the client is getting 360-degree service. I would love to continue this dialogue because I'm a strong believer in life coaching. I think I fell into both of these professions as a personal trainer and as a life coach by dint of the fact that I genuinely like helping people. Most of the time, I see personal training as the how, whereas I see life coaching as the why. If you can layer those 2 things together, the outcomes can be incredible. I'm not saying that you need both, but I am saying that when you examine your life, if you can perform your own root cause analysis, if you can look at your relationships with the struggles that you're having and maybe where the root of those struggles comes from, you're going to be able to make a more selective decision when it comes to what kind of advocacy you need. If it turns out you need a personal trainer or a life coach, you know where to find me. Do you see that?
I didn't see it.
Yeah, it's this thing right here.